Casper. I'm one of the committee members on to put our concert together today. I'd like to welcome you to Congregation of B'nai Israel. First, I'd like to have our rabbi say a couple words, and then I'd like you to join me in welcoming our esteemed guests today, Dr. Arbie Orenstein and Cantor Shira Lissek, and turn pages today will be our own British Schoenfeld.
There's a lot that could be said about our performers today. They have illustrious biographies. I know some of you have read those biographies, and I'd like to point out, however, that they arrived here solely through nepotism, despite all those illustrious biographies, and through lifelong, in the case of my Uncle Arbie, and almost lifelong in the case of Shira Lissek, family connections. I wanted to welcome you all here with the word of Torah from the Psalms, Psalm 146. Hallelujah, holy nafshi et Adonai. Praise God, O my soul. Ahalah Adonai b'chayai, azav ra l'Elohai be'odi. Difficult for us to translate. I will praise God while I live. I will make music to God while I exist. Or we could say, I praise God with my very life. I will make music with all that I've got in me. Be'odi. Now, when it comes to making music, I have to admit, some of us have a little bit more in us than others. We have here Cantor Lenny Mandel. We have Cantor Perry Fine, we have Cantor Ted Prosnitz, we have Arbie Orenstein, we have Shira Lissek. Some of us have a real talent, a real gift for music. But whatever you have in you, that is what you can devote to praising God and to making a beautiful and a joyful noise while you live. The great Reb Nachman of Bratslav took this verse as his key verse, and he said, Azav Elohai be'odi, I will sing to God with what's in me. He said, be'odi doesn't just mean with everything I have in me, it even means with the little bit I have in me. When you feel totally depleted, when there's almost nothing left, when you say, I don't have a good voice, I can't carry a tune, I have no energy, I have no strength, that's the moment when you dip into that OD. You dip in the little bit of OD shegesh, the little bit that is still there. And from that, you can find your life and your praise. So maybe for all of us. I want to introduce now my Dode Arbie, Uncle Arbie Orenstein. He has a few other claims to fame. He is 45 years a professor at the Emerson School at Queens College. He gives the pre-Philharmonic lectures at the New York Philharmonic. He's a concert pianist in his own right and a fabulous accompanist to Cantor Shira Lissek. He has a few words to share before beginning the concert. Thank you so much for being here.
Very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to dedicate this afternoon's concert to the memory of my dear brother, Rabbi Arbie Orenstein, Deborah's father, who was a fine pianist in his own right. And if you think I play well, I had to fight with him when we were kids to who would practice more. I'd like to suggest that you look at the program that we have divided into 4 parts. I'll be playing several solo numbers at the very beginning, and then Cantor Lissek will come forward, and everything that she's going to sing, be it in Hebrew or Yiddish or Italian or French, you'll find the translations towards the back of your program. So, without further ado, why don't we begin? first work on the program, as you'll see, is marked alla turca, which is an Italian term that Mozart used. It means in Turkish style. Now, Mozart lived at the end of the 18th century, and at that time, Turkish marching bands were very popular in Vienna. And indeed, after a few years of writing this march, it is a march that he's writing in Turkish style, which means that he's imitating the sounds of a Turkish band with fife and drum, and I think you'll be able to hear the drums and the percussion and the flutes and so on. And this particular work is the last part of a sonata. He wrote this after the third part, the third movement, which he simply called alla turca, and everyone in Vienna in 1781 knew exactly what he was talking about, a little light-hearted spoof on Turkish marching bands. One of the great 19th century composers who lived half of his life starting out in Poland and then moving to France, where he was active as a pianist, teacher, and certainly one of the most original composers who ever wrote for the piano. This particular work, a waltz, he wrote about 20 waltzes. The waltz was the biggest dance in all of Europe in the 19th century, as the minuet was in the 18th century. And the reason for that is that as you're sitting here, believe it or not, you are in waltz rhythm. We are all ticking away in why do you say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So you'll have no trouble following the roll. You've been doing it for a long time. The magic of Chopin is his enchanting turns of harmony, unexpected chords that sound as fresh as the day you wrote them. This particular work is in the key of E minor, a rather gracious waltz with some virtuosity saved for the very end, as he has a big concluding 4 chords to end the work, but along the way a very dolce, as he says, sweet melodies that he writes, and one waltz kind of moves right into the next. So here's the waltz in E minor of Frederick Chopin. Whom his great colleague Maurice Ravel once called the most phenomenal genius in the history of French music. Debussy was born in 1862 and died in 1918. He wrote a wide variety of music for piano, orchestra, voice, you name it. He did it all. And among his most famous pieces, of which there are many, perhaps one of the best known is the Clair de Lune, which means moonlight. Now, everyone has imagination, for Debussy, myself, and you, the audience. So, whatever your concept of the moon may be, looking at the moon, I'm sure Debussy didn't think anyone would land on the moon, and that didn't happen in his lifetime. But certainly, the picture of waters, shimmering waters, moonlight, again, he's drawing a beautiful picture for us. And it's our job as performers and listeners to try and create that very lovely picture. He worked on this piece for quite a long time and revised it about 15 years after he first composed it. And it is, as I said, one of his most popular works. It's often played by string family and given a little Hollywood interpretation, but this is as he wrote it, as part of a suite of 4 pieces. The third piece, the slow movement, so to speak, the Claire de Lune. be wondering, in your program it says 2 pieces by Debussy. Well, this man's extraordinary imagination was in so many different areas. We just heard an aspect of this kind of impressionistic, colorful, blended sound. Well, the next piece, Minstrels, he didn't know any English, Debussy, but he borrowed this word because he was interested in American jazz, which was just starting to make its inroads in Paris in the first decade of the 20th century. So the next piece, he could have said Menestrel, which is the French word for minstrels, but he didn't. So his indication in this one is nervous and with humor, very different from the piece we've just heard. And towards the middle of the piece, mocking. So this is a very curious piece with respect to his take on American jazz as it was first manifested in the early decades of the 20th century, which at that point had come only from New Orleans. A little bit later on, he's going to introduce a passage which he says like a drum. So it's as if a kind of a 3-ring circus is taking place. And then a little pop tune comes up that you might expect to hear on a Paris boulevard. And then he kind of returns to his opening nervous theme, his little drum, and ending with 2 sharp chords. So here's a very different kind of Debussy. This is from his book of Preludes from 1910, which he wrote 12. This is the last of this first book of Preludes for the piano. Introduce in just a moment Shira Lissek, who will be singing for you. And we've saved an individual, the best for last. Cantor Shira Lissek is here. Leon, why don't you just stand up and take a bow? Lissek served for 30 years in St. Louis, and I always accompanied him. So now I'm accompanying his daughter, and I'm waiting for their children to grow up, and I'll tell them. In any event, the first piece that Cantor Lissek is going to sing for you, Jerusalem is Mine. Kenny Karen is a Canadian-born poet and composer, a very gifted young man. And I'd like you to focus on the words. We don't have them in the program, but I'm sure you'll be able to follow them as they're sung in English. Jerusalem is Mine is really an homage to this very ancient yet very modern city which I think is in the hearts of so many people around the world. So here is a very beautiful setting of Jerusalem as interpreted by a wonderful poet and a wonderful composer. Jerusalem is mine. The music of Maurice Ravel is performed probably more than any other French composer. He was born in 1875 and died in 1937. Along the way in his illustrious career, he often turned to folk melodies from around the world. And this was rather curious because he tried to learn foreign languages and he didn't do very well. He was in a hotel in Spain in 1924 and he tried at his best Spanish to get a letter. He wanted to write a postage stamp and a letter to write home. So the waiter ceremoniously knocked on the door and came in with a cup of hot chocolate. So if he was fluent in French, that's about as far as it went. Nevertheless, he was fascinated with all types of cultures, and believe it or not, he sent texts that were originally written in Greek and in Yiddish and in Hebrew and in English, and in Russian and in Flemish, and so on and so forth. And although he was not Jewish, he was very much attracted to Jewish music. And the first song, we'll listen to two of his, what he calls chansons hébraïques, two Hebraic songs that he wrote. And his ability here to somehow find the exact accompaniment that would work perfectly with these well-known melodies. So you have a translation in the program of Meir the son, and you can follow along where the son and the father dialogue with these beautiful chords, and then the moving rhythm back to the chords, back to the rhythm, and so on. And then the second one, the world asks the old question. And here, Ravel was criticized by no less than Abraham Edelson, who was one of the greatest scholars of Jewish music in 1929. Edelson noted that Mr. Ravel's setting of this melody is ultra-modern and doesn't suit the proper scales of Jewish music. Well, Ravel really wasn't interested in that. He was interested in writing a composition that could pass for an art song. So what he really did, and he has some really curious harmonies here, but they work. In the second song, that he's going to write, as I said, very unusual chords to turn a folk melody into an art song. So let's see how he does. The two Hebraic songs of Ravel, and as I say, you can follow along in the program with the translation.
You
Our next stop is Italy. And if there's one thing that Italians love to tell you about their language, is that we've got more vowels than anybody else. And you sing on vowels. Try and sing on the letter S or R. Can't be done. So, the rich language of opera, and of course opera developed in Italy. The first important operas were written in the early 17th century. And the stretch of Italian opera all the way from Monteverdi in the 17th century to Mozart in the 18th century to Verdi in the 19th century to Puccini in the 20th century. So Giacomo Puccini, before writing many of his operas, which were written at the turn of the 20th century, several years apart, he worked very, very hard with his librettists. He wrote a number of songs, and we'd like to share 4 of them with you. And you can see the translations. I would say that the various authors whose names appear there would have certainly long been forgotten had they not been associated with Puccini. And indeed, the very first one is going to have a passage in it that he would use about 15 years later in the 3rd act of La Bohème. And if you've heard La Bohème, the Bohemians, his first operatic hit, then you may recognize that particular tune. The second one, Avanti Urania, is about a boat, and Puccini was fascinated with boats. He had his own little motorboat that he used to ride around on the lake, which was not far from his home, which is now a national museum in Italy. So we're kind of outdoors and very joyous, happy occasion as the sun is shining, pretty much like it is today, and he's out on his boat on the water. And the last 2 are 2 very lovely lullabies. L'Uccellino is a lullaby of a little bird to its fledgling, and Sognador is a lullaby of a mother to her child. So here are 4 songs of Puccini, and then we'll conclude the first part of the program following that with an aria from Gianni Schicchi. I'll just say a few words about that when we come to it. of you who follow Italian opera to be congratulated. If you can figure out what's going on after everything that goes around, they make the soap opera seem like ABC. But in any event, this particular opera, Johnny Schicchi, you'll be happy to know, was first sung in New York in 1918. And it is a comic opera, one of three that Puccini called a trio, a grouping of three. And actually, the story itself goes back to Dante's Inferno, which he wrote in 1299. So the Italians are very aware of their history. At any event, without getting too involved, the bottom line is that Johnny Schicchi is going to outwit his enemies. A member of the family has passed away, and in the opening scene, everybody's crying. But they're crying, but we're happy to have that phrase in English, crocodile tears. They're just waiting to get their hands on this guy's money. So Johnny Schicchi's got to outwit them all. So at this point, his daughter Loretta is in love with Minuccio, and she threatens, as you'll see, nothing's going to happen, because she will finally get his consent, and all will end well as Schicchi manages to outwit his adversaries. So here is her big aria. The very opening few measures are a niente, which won't be sung. It's sung by someone else. She says, no, that's not going to happen. And then she gives her beautiful, appealing aria, and you can follow the words and Puccini's enchanting harmonies that go with it.
The word itself suggests something tossed off, so to speak, but it's anything but. Schubert died in 1828 at the age of 31, perhaps the shortest lived of all the giants of Western music. And before he passed away, he'd written over 1,000 compositions, which is just kind of mind-boggling. Among them were about 600 songs for voice and piano. We call them Lieder, German art songs. And I'd like to suggest that this work, although it's written for the piano, is really a German song. If you put German words to it, in the 19th century, witnessed the greatest flowering of German poetry, with Goethe and Heine and Schiller and so many others. And so it is really a song for the keyboard. And in the middle section, which you'll have no trouble following, I'm sure, there's a running passage, and then he returns to his opening song to end the work. The form of the piece, therefore, we would call ABA, the song part, the running part, and the song part. And as I look out, form follows nature. I see everyone here is also an ABA. What you've got on the left side of your body, you've got on the right side, and the B part is something in between. So there we are. So part of the program, I played for you Debussy's Clair de Lune, which was an evocation of moonlight. And the piece of Ravel that we have next was a piece, Sorrowful Birds. Ravel himself said about this piece, which he wrote in 1904, that it attempted to depict birds that are lost in a forest during the hottest hours of the day. So if you can picture various bird calls, at times flourishing and running through the sky, at times, as it were, calling one to another. But I think the key word here is the birds are sorrowful. They're lost. They want to find their way. It's hot, and so on. And from this, he creates a very beautiful picture. And once again, Ravel used his imagination. I'll use mine, and use yours. Composers around the world have always been attracted to childhood, aren't we all? Well, Octavio Pinto, not well known, but a very fine Brazilian composer, wrote five children's pieces in 1932, and you have a description of the titles, and you'll see that the description, for example, of the first piece, Run, Run,
The garden is full of life, and the sunshine children run about. And on the outside then comes the B section, a little bit slower. A poor blind man sings his sorrows. And then back to the children again, running gaily and noisily. So there's our A4. And then ring around the rosy, the children are singing and dancing. And march, soldier, march. Little Louis Ottavio comes marching by, and his boys in paper hats carrying broomsticks as wooden guns. And then finally, you'll hear the cuckoo clock striking 6, and the girls sing their lullabies. And at the very end, the 5th piece playtime is over, and the children come prancing happily home. Those of you who follow the Philharmonic, they know there's a program of 20th century music this week, and I might mention the first piece in the program is Ravel's take on childhood, in which he is going to have 5 pieces based on the Mother Goose Tales of Charles Perrault. So children's pieces are attracted all over the world, and here is Ottavio Pinto's pieces. Rather unusually, he was trained as an architect, and he went to Paris, and he studied with Isidore Philippe, who was one of the great French pedagogues of the early 20th century. And smart man that he was, Mr. Pinto married Guillemot of Venice, one of the greatest pianists of the 20th century. And naturally, she has recorded this piece, and is a definitive recording, I might add. So here are the 5 short pieces of Ottavio Pinto, Memories of Childhood.
There's one thing we've got more than any other country in the world. Source. Problems. Well, Israel, amidst all of its problems, does have, I would say, her poet laureate. And that is Naomi Shemer. Naomi Shemer, by her own request, was buried right at the Lake Galilee, the shores of the Lake Galilee. And she really, for maybe 40, 50 years, was writing Hebrew songs that Israel just kept singing, and they still do. And her song, Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, Jerusalem the Golden, is virtually a national anthem, so to speak, of this wonderful poet and composer. So the next two songs you're going to hear, you don't have to look for the translation. Cantor Lissek will sing them first in Hebrew and then sing the English translation. The Grove of Eucalyptus was from a Broadway show, To Live Another Summer, To Pass Another Winter. And then another one of her wonderful songs, Will Ye May It Come to Be. Two songs of Naomi Shemer.
Hatzi me'avra
Abraham Goldfarb, many people are surprised to learn, just like Irving Berlin, had virtually no musical training whatsoever and was almost illiterate in writing down music. So you might say, well, how did he write these wonderful songs? And the same is true of Irving Berlin. Well, they simply dictated them to professional musicians who very often would write down the notes, and the composers might make suggestions for harmony and so on. But Goldfarb was particularly associated with the Yiddish theater, and as such, his most famous song, for which he wrote the words himself, Russia has been bombed. You can follow the translation, Raisins and Apples, a very lovely lullaby. And ladies, if you have your handkerchiefs, now's the time. We now have two settings of the same poem. Paul Verlaine was one of the great poets of the French language, and I might mention parenthetically, the French and the Italians have been arguing for 300 years which language is more beautiful. But I'll leave that up to you to decide. But please don't tell me English. At any event, Verlaine was a fascinating character. As a poet, one might think he would praise poetry and writing and literature, but in a line that is known to every school kid in France, he wrote in 1875, de la musique avant toute chose. He says, music above all. And it's a very puzzling statement until you realize that what he tried to do in his poetry was to be suggesting of ideas, of colors, of pastel shadings, of blending. And as far as eloquence was concerned, he said, wring its neck. He was not interested in fancy words and that type of thing. So here is this poem, which attracted not only Gabriel Fauré, who made his setting of it in the 1890s, and Claude Debussy, who made his setting of it about a decade before. But the poem itself is loaded with musical associations. The very title, a mandolin, the musical instrument. And how do you play a mandolin? Well, you pluck it. So you'll hear a lot of short staccato notes, as we call them, notes that are separated and plucked, as it were, on the piano. But then we read the soft blue shadows that whirl in the ecstasy. Here are pastel shadings, and here both composers try to achieve a certain pastel lyricism in their writing. Each of them, I might mention, takes a certain liberty with the poem itself. Fauré completes the poem and then goes back to the beginning and ends actually in the fourth verse. That is to say, they exchanged insipid remarks to various people under the singing boughs. So what people have to say is not interesting. But singing boughs, nature is.
So Fauré is going to end on the fourth line of the poem after having set the entire poem. And Claude Debussy, the second selection, is going to add la 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 la, which never occurred to Verlaine. So Debussy's having a good time with this thing, in this rather joyous, fantastic scene under the moonlight. So here are two settings of the same poem by Verlaine, first by Gabriel Fauré, in mandolin, and by Claude Debussy. Irving Berlin, as his good friend Ron Kern said, Irving Berlin has no place in American song. He is American song. What can one say about this extraordinary man who was born in Russia, came to the United States at the age of 5, lived to the age of 101, and his father was a Chazan. And the biggest selling song ever written was I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas. Only in America. But along the way, he wrote so many hits. He was awarded a Congressional Medal of Honor for God Bless America, which many people feel should be the national anthem of the United States, rather than the one that we do have. At any event, the three songs that we're going to perform for you, you can see two of them by Irving Berlin, who wrote his own words, and Bewitched by Richard Rogers, who teamed up with Lawrence Hart for many outstanding songs. This one from a play, Pal Joey. And later on, when Lawrence Hart passed away, Richard Rogers teamed up with Oscar Hammerstein and gave us so many masterpieces, Carousel, and so many others. But in any event, Irving Berlin, as I mentioned before, was a remarkable individual whose musical training was extraordinarily limited. He kind of poked with one finger and had his harmony and his orchestrations and everything arranged by professional musicians. But I think he achieved probably the greatest success. There was something that he did have inside of him, this sixth sense of how to reach people, how to reach across the lights of the stage and touch people's hearts. And I think you'll sense that very strongly in these wonderful songs that he wrote. And as far as Richard Rogers is concerned, well, what can we say about him? We're very proud that he graduated from my alma mater, Columbia University, needless to say. And he too was just an extraordinary musician. He was a real musician with a knowledge of orchestration and counterpoint and harmony and all of the musician study for so many years. So, 3 songs that need no translation, 2 by Irving Berlin and 1 by Richard Rogers.
Me
What message of Judaism is, you'll never walk alone.